all the exempt events and all these big games, we have run into Gonzaga over a number of years, previous teams. And, last year's team was incredible. A couple of years ago was incredible before the tournament got shut down. They've been on that route to the national championship, games. But about the current team, I think, you in particular have really laughed about the talk surrounding their new players, Chet Holmgren, number one pick, and you won't deviate from the performance that Drew Timme had the other night was, it was eye-opening about how good he was. But I think your point being is you weren't paying attention last year, were you? Because he was the best offensive player in Ken Palm a year ago on the best team. Why is that going to change this year? And how will that impact the rest of these young guys, in particular, a guy like Chet or some of those young guys that are playing with him? But let's talk about Gonzaga. And I think moving forward, how good is Drew Timme?
So Duke at its finest, maybe ever. They had Christian Laettner, Bobby Hurley was their point guard, Grant Hill, and they won back-to-back national championships. And that's before guys were really leaving as freshmen for the NBA. I mean, those guys are sophomores and juniors. College basketball is a very talented field. And Christian Laettner was the best on a team that had a lot of greatness. Tyler Hansbrough at Carolina, same thing. As they moved through to national championship, Final Fours, ACC championships under Roy Williams, it was easy to really look and say, look at what he's doing statistically. Drew Timme is not only those two guys equal, because Gonzaga from wire to wire last year, they were the best team in the country, them and Baylor. They ended up 30-something and one, losing to Baylor in the national championship. So you can't say they didn't win or he didn't play with other great players. He did. Arch, his stats are sick. And here I am, I'm watching the next year. He's only a junior, early in his junior year, against Texas. It's one of the marquee games of the early season. Mm-hmm. Texas at Gonzaga. It's what people want. How about instead of the neutral setting, let's go home and away. So Texas goes in there, and they're a work in progress, clearly. But Gonzaga as a team shoots 54%. They go 15 of 17 from the line, 7 of 19 from three. How about this? Play the entire 40 minutes as a team with 6 turnovers. Drew Timme in that same game, he had 37 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Arch, he was 15 of 19 from the field. And, as I watched the game, a huge narrative is, what about Chet Holmgren? That someday Chet will look back at that game and laugh. He played 9 minutes and scored 2 points. Chet, that is not a knock on Chet Holmgren. You can't judge a player or a team in the month of November. We just talked about it. Mm-hmm. But you also have to see it for what it is. And the credit needs to go to the actual players and teams that are winning. What is it that separates Gonzaga? In my mind, a big separation is just how great of a college player Drew Timme is. And, I talked to Mark Few, and I consider him a coaching friend. I also think he's one of the greats in our game, period. Whether it be an NBA coach or college basketball coach, he's right up the top. But just kind of listening to him describe Timme and just watching how creative they are at getting him the ball, I don't think there is a player in the country that's better. There's not a player in the country who means more to their team. And I would say this, he might have been that same guy a year ago as a sophomore. Again, you said it. At the end of the college basketball season, who was the most efficient, productive offensive player who played college basketball? Drew Timme. That same guy just did what I described against Texas, who's a formidable opponent. Trust me, Chris Beard, he had a number of conversations after that game about in the future when Drew Timme, who's from the state of Texas, is popping up, we got to get him. We don't ever want to play against that guy from the state of Texas. But I think that I don't look at it as a negative spin towards Chet, because as you keep watching Chet Holmgren and he practices more, practice is important, plays in more games, learns through film and learns from trial and error of what he can and can't do, gets used to playing in a new system with college players, he'll become a great player. But don't put the spotlight only on what he's doing when you have not only a great team that he's playing with, but you have a great player on your team. I think almost ditto for Peyton Watson, Arch. Peyton Watson, the freshman at UCLA. The gift for Chet Holmgren and Peyton Watson, they're on a team that's primed to win the national championship. The negative towards them early on is they're going to have to maybe work into the rotation, and their best days are going to be in January and February. Part of why they're not getting the shine right now in November is they're on a really, really good team. They're just a small part to a bigger puzzle.
Right. And, the tough part is for all coaches, especially when you're dealing with talented players that you recruited, it's that balance of, getting them better, not allowing them to get frustrated. When you turn on the television and another of your, peers, Amoni Bates, Jalen Durant, you see those guys playing more minutes.
Right.
Maybe they're not on as good of a team, and sometimes that works against you as the coach as well. You're trying to, move forward. But as I watched UCLA the other night play, and Peyton Watson played sparingly, he had some spot minutes at the end. I think he'll keep getting better as
He's
he
going to
goes,
get
just
better
because Mick values some of the things that he does, and he's playing arguably with 3 or 4 of the best offensive players in college basketball. And then Chet, I think, is going to have to adjust a little bit because Timmy is so good. How's he going to play against smaller players on both ends of the floor? It's adjustment for a guy that's 7 foot plus. Second thing is, what can he do to take Gonzaga over the top that they may not have once had? I've thought that, a la Anthony Davis plays at Kentucky, an amazing team of 10 to 12 guys. He averaged 12 points. I think he was the National Defensive Player of the Year, though. Maybe Chet can start to, go into that route with the shot blocking. But there's no question that I watched Luka Garza play in his last 2 seasons at Iowa. I believed he was the National Player of the Year as a junior. Obi Toppin won it partly because of what you said, team success, individuals. Dayton had the historic season.
Yeah.
But Luka Garza's numbers offensively as a junior were incredible. Incredible. He averaged about 24 a game. As a senior, he did it again. And he won, parade, the Wooden Award and all that stuff. But I think Drew Timmy's on pace right now to probably shatter. I mean, he's going to shatter some individual records this year with the way that they play.
Arch, with team success comes all the individual accolades.
Yeah, no question.
Those young, talented freshmen, you can't judge them by how they play in November. But when you get to March Madness and the team they're on is playing in the NCAA tournament, advancing towards a Final Four, they'll really understand then what a great decision they made to join a program and a team that's ready-made. And look, at the end of the day, the players and the coaches and the teams that get the most credit are those that win. Sometimes, at Arizona, when you get in the top 25 and you've been in the top 25 for multiple years, our guys would leave the locker room and go back to their places they live. And I know what they were doing. They're looking at their phone and they're watching Sports Center, they're watching TV for their highlights. You always get the highlights when you're top 25. Then all of a sudden, like, you lose a couple and you're outside the top 25. I'd sometimes say to them, hey, look, be careful watching the highlights tonight. You could be disappointed. You're not going to show any. You know why? Because we're no longer ranked as a team.
Right.
With team success comes the individual accolades, whether you end up averaging 12.8 points a game or 18.2 points a game. It's so much about winning. It's so much about being a winning player. And I think as a coach and a staff, working so hard to block out the noise that can sometimes get involved with your team's success. It could be something innocent that somebody says, in a chat. It could be something they watch on TV. It could be something a family member says to them, but there's so much interference around your team that the awareness of it, having a great staff that can handle it, that's part of being a team and developing your team, getting through those moments. I mean, think about it. Chet Holmgren is going to be a lottery pick. Maybe he'll end up being the number 1 pick in the draft. Do you think he envisioned going to Gonzaga, playing his first big game against Texas, playing 9 minutes and scoring 2 points? I know they won. He knows they won. He understands that was a win, but how is he supposed to feel good? And I think allowing him to see it for what it really is, like we mentioned earlier, next play, next game, him bouncing back And I think that you'll see him bounce back.
They have more marquee games on the docket. Do you feel that Gonzaga, and I don't have it off the top of my head, I know they have UCLA coming up in Vegas, I believe Duke in
Duke, yeah.
Vegas, and I'm not sure after that how many marquee. Can anybody beat them with how good Timmy is in November? Like when you have a guy that
Right.
good in November and you have to deal with a guy that's that good in November, he single-handedly can do what he did to Texas, beat him by himself.
One thing that's different for Gonzaga this year is this is the youngest team they've had in some time. They return, they have two returning starters, right? And it just so happens that the point guard, right, and Drew Timme,
He's great.
Those two guys are really, really good, right? So you have those two positions covered, but they do have an influx of new players and players in different roles. I don't think they're unbeatable early on. As a matter of fact, if they catch a loss or two, it might be something that helps them grow as a group because they've been winning at such a level the last year and a half. But I would say, to answer your specific question, I believe they're more vulnerable this year than they would have been at any time last year, especially early on. As they get more sustained in their new roles and the new players get used to playing in a system and Chet Holmgren continues to develop, I think Gonzaga will be their best late in the year, not early this year.
You watch the Texas game, you're getting ready to play him. You're obviously saying, what are we going to do? Can you trap him with the way that they play?
No.
Impossible.
If you trap him, if I knew you were trapping and you want to ever bet on a college basketball game, if you ever know they're going to trap the post, bet on Gonzaga. They're done. They will get blown out of
You
any
can't.
arena.
Impossible. What makes them so hard to trap?
They play at a breakneck speed. A lot of the baskets they score are happening at a fast pace coming at your defense. They have not only good movement, but when he catches it, let's start with him. He's a very good passer. As good of a passer as Sabonis was for Gonzaga, I think you're going to look at Drew Timme, and if you talk to their coaching staff, they would tell you he's about as good of a passer as Sabonis. And they're players that he's throwing the ball to. Like, Arch, there's some guys, that are self-checked.
Yeah.
We played with them, or I don't think I was ever self-checked as a player. You coach guys that are self-checked. You hate to talk about it, but you're trying to hide them. You're trying to dive them. You're trying to get them away from any way that they could, tell on themselves that they can't score if no one's in the gym. There's nobody that takes the court for Gonzaga that's not a threat. So all five guys are a threat. He's a very good passer, and they're built to take away the post trap. If you post trap them, you're done. And if someone proves me wrong, I would love to see.
It'll be interesting to see. I know, Mick has trapped the post in the past. I don't necessarily know if that's the way you're going to go moving forward, but it'll be interesting to see how they do it. But Gonzaga has got a big one coming up here at the end of the week, Thanksgiving week, and obviously Duke is on the horizon as well.